Last night I was able to attend a surprise screening of Marvel Studios' Werewolf by Night at Fantastic Fest. So let's talk about it. Werewolf by Night is an upcoming Disney Plus special based off the comic of the same name. Be sure to join me down below in the comment section. Let me know your excitement level for Werewolf by Night. What are you expecting from it? To give you a little bit of context, I'm currently attending Fantastic Fest. It's a genre film festival. They play a lot of horror, sci-fi, action, foreign films, and they always have 2 secret screenings where you sign up for it, but you don't know what you're gonna get. And sometimes they do some very exciting things, and the first secret screening this year was Werewolf by Night. It was a little bit funny because in almost any context for both me and people in general, it would be very exciting to get to be at the first public screening of a new Marvel project, and that's what this was. We were the first audience to get to see this, but at Fantastic Fest, myself included, we attend it because we're trying to kind of move away from the mainstream, discover kind of new and exciting things. And so when you get Marvel Studios, it's actually a little bit disappointing in that context to get something as popular as a Marvel project, but it did fit Fantastic Fest as this is a horror project, a monster movie project in the MCU. So let's get started talking about the good. And right off the bat, I just thoroughly enjoyed the fact that it was a simple, straightforward, standalone story with its own vibe and tone. Its scope and size is very limited. You're essentially just at this one location with this one very straightforward mission, and that was just kind of refreshing, where so many Marvel projects have to be grand in scope and size. Here, it's all set up and finished in the course of the runtime of the special. And another thing kind of made it special was that it is this throwback retro monster movie set in the MCU. It's very much taking inspiration from the classic Universal monster movies, trying to have kind of that aesthetic, except it's from Marvel Studios and based off a Marvel comic. And so just kind of the look of things, the way the credits were done, the entire, or almost the entire thing is in black and white. There is some color used in it, but it's primarily just black and white. And so it feels wholly new, fresh, original inside the MCU, offering something different from what they normally offer. And because it's so unique and different from the rest of the MCU, it actually gives it a cool vibe to it. Even though it's campy at times and goofy with the way that it does things, because it's just kind of going by its own beat, it comes off cool. I mean, so much of the MCU is the most mainstream stuff out there, appealing to the broadest possible audience. And this, it's not trying to do that. It's trying to kind of be this throwback monster story that's not ashamed, not afraid to be a little bit campy at times. I've had some people asking me if it's a comedy. I would not call this a comedy. There's humor sprinkled throughout. It is a little bit campy, but I would not call this a comedy. Along those same lines, it's a lot more practical than a lot of the MCU. They built real sets. They were in real environments. And while there is some CGI with the creatures, the director talked about in the Q&A afterwards that they had real things on set. So actors were acting to a thing, not just a tennis ball on a stick. He specifically said, I didn't want my actors acting to a tennis ball, so we brought something in on set, even where we knew we would be replacing it with CGI afterwards. Likewise, the story involves a group of kind of these hunters trying to go after a creature for a prize, and they're hunting each other as well as the creature. So you get a bunch of kind of cool action sequences in that with martial arts choreography, and they're shot in a way where you can actually see what's happening, where a lot of wider shots, longer takes, as opposed to kind of some of that modern style with close-ups and quick cuts. No, you can actually see what they're doing in the action sequences. And here's a big one. This is a throwback horror story set in the MCU, and that means it's violent, it's gory, and it's bloody. And if you're a hardcore horror fan, it's very tame, but compared to the rest of the MCU, I think this is the bloodiest thing in the MCU, where hands get cut off and blood pours out of it. During the big finale, blood sprays on the camera, heads get cut off. And so obviously it's not hardcore, violent, ultra R-rated gore. It is black and white, and so that dampens the effect of it, and that's probably why they put it in black and white, so they could be more violent. But I'm pretty sure this is the most violent and gory thing in the MCU. Once again, if you're a hardcore horror fan, it's not that. But if you're used to the MCU, if you're not typically into horror, this is bloody and gory. And finally, as I was watching it, I was thinking, this is a model for how the MCU can take more risks in the future. I'm sure it didn't have a particularly big budget. It's a very small, self-contained story. Therefore, it can do a bunch of wild, weird, and risky things without it feeling like it's messing with the rest of the MCU. After I saw the new Predator movie Prey a couple months back, I thought that could be a model for how other big franchises can continue moving forward in the future and do kind of these streaming sequels that are kind of these pocket stories. That's what this felt like, a little pocket story inside of the MCU that could be riskier, bolder, be more creative, more interesting, without feeling like it needs to have world-shattering implications or tie into a bunch of things, have a bunch of cameos. No, it's just a little pocket story, and it was cool to see that in the MCU. So just in general, it was just a nice breath of fresh air for the MCU to have something so wildly different, taking some risks, trying some things, and it worked. It was just nice to have this small, self-contained story. From there, let's move on to the mixed aspects of the project. First thing that comes to mind here is that it is a more niche project. For the first 3 phases of the MCU, pretty much everything was designed to have a very broad appeal audience where they're all kind of sci-fi action with comedy thrown in. And during phase 4, and especially with these Disney Plus projects, a lot of them are kind of more focused and niche in their target audience, and this is certainly an example of that. Just because you liked Iron Man, that doesn't mean that you're gonna like seeing this throwback 1950s-esque monster movie horror project in the MCU. It's quite different from what's come before, but if you like horror movies, if you've wanted the MCU to maybe have a bit more gore and violence, if you like the classic Universal monster movies, this might be the thing that you love in the MCU the most, because it is so kind of targeted and specific in what it's trying to do. Next thing you need to know here, it's about 50 minutes long. It's not really a movie. It's longer than a normal episode of television. And with the 50 minutes, that it didn't have 8 minutes of credits afterwards. Like I couldn't time the exact runtime in the room. This wasn't a screener, like I was literally in a theater. It didn't have long credits, but the official runtime I've seen says it's about 53, 52 minutes long, something like that. So it's kind of in this awkward mix between TV show and movie, and it tells its story in that context. And the final one in here is that it is a standalone story. Even since I tweeted about it last night, people keep asking me, are there references to this? Are there references to that? Does it tie to that? It's a standalone story at this one location. I don't want to go anything more specific or more spoilery than that, but it's self-contained story from Marvel Studios. From there, let's move on to the bad. And my biggest issue with Werewolf by Night is a little bit of a compliment, but it's that I wish that it was 80 or 90 minutes long. I totally get that the whole point was to tell this very simple, straightforward, self-contained story. Get in, get out, don't overstay its welcome. But when it's only 50 minutes long and you're introducing all of the characters, the conflict, trying to have some action, you just don't have any time to really dive into any of the characters, any of the mythology. You're just dropped right into the middle of it. The hunt begins, the complications unfold, and you get to the resolution very quickly. And there was absolutely room for this to be another 30 minutes in length, and just pause a little bit longer to understand our 2 main characters, pause to understand this world of monsters inside of the MCU, and add in a couple more action sequences and extend the ones that we do have just a little bit longer. I don't think that the 50-minute runtime did it any favors, and I don't think that adding 50 minutes to the project would have made it drag it all or been some sort of gigantic burden to the budget or anything like that, because it is kind of such a small project compared to everything else in the MCU. This has to be by far the cheapest thing they've ever put out. And I say that as a good thing. I appreciate that it's not trying to be a blockbuster. That's what I like about it, but it could have been 20, 30 minutes longer, and I think that only would have served the project. The other big problem here is the creature designs. I wasn't really feeling it. It's in this kind of weird middle ground where it's trying to be this homage to 1930s, 40s, 50s monster movies, but it's also being put out by Marvel Studios. And so you're kind of in this odd middle ground where the biggest studio on the planet is trying to make something look cheaper than it actually is. And even in the interview afterwards, he said, yeah, I mean, this creature is actually a CGI design. And you're like, I just don't know that that was the way to go. Just go all in with the practical, all in with the throwback design, but trying to do that middle ground made both the werewolf and man thing have a lot of kind of awkwardness to the way that they looked in the project. In general, I thoroughly enjoyed Werewolf by Night, and my biggest issue, honestly, is I wish that it was longer and we got to know these characters and this mythology a little bit better. It's something new and refreshing inside the MCU that breaks their normal mold. It goes a bit more niche and delivers some solid entertainment along the way. If you're a fan of horror projects, or if you're someone that likes the MCU but wants something different in the mix, I definitely recommend checking out Werewolf by Night when it comes out. If you enjoyed this video, I've done a ton of other MCU content. You can check it out in that playlist right over there. Also, I'm doing other coverage of Fantastic Fest. You can check out some of those videos right down there. Thank you so much for watching, and keep talking movies and TV too much. Bye-bye.